Hello there, my name is Jeff from CMAC. Today, we're going to go over how to set up an interview and what equipment you may want to check out for your interview setups. Before you even check out equipment, you're going to want to decide what style of interview you're going to film. Will you be filming the interviewee alone, or will there be multiple subjects? Will the interviewer be filmed or even heard? How much space do you have to film in? Does the subject wish to remain anonymous? These are all things that need to be taken into account when setting up an interview because they determine what equipment you will need. Let's start simple. Just your typical interview with one subject. The interviewer does not need to appear in the video at all. Before we even begin to set up, we want to figure out what our background will be. We want something that is visually interesting, but that doesn't distract the viewer too much. Having depth can also be important, so shooting in front of a large space can often be better than shooting against a wall. If you are shooting against a wall, try moving your subject as far away from that wall as possible to create depth. Finally, we'll want to be careful about windows. If properly set up, windows can add visual interest and create some practical lighting, lessening the need for other lights. However, if not properly exposed for, they can easily appear blown out and distract the viewer. Generally, the brightest thing in the shot should be our subject, since our eyes will naturally gravitate towards the brightest thing in our view. Now that we have our background, let's actually set things up. For this basic setup, we'll start with a camera and a tripod. I recommend our Sony X70s and Z90s because of their versatility and full-size XLR ports. These cameras are great for those just starting in production. For those familiar with production or who need the ability to change lenses, CMAC does offer the C100 Mark II and FS5 for checkout. We'll take our camera setup and offset it from the chair ever so slightly. This means that our subject will be looking to the side of the camera, making it feel more natural. Also, don't forget to balance your tripod head, otherwise the frame won't look level. Having the subject look directly into the camera can often make the viewer uncomfortable since it feels like they're looking and talking directly at said viewer. In most cases, the viewer should feel like they're watching a conversation, not having a conversation. Our interviewer will sit in between the camera and the key light. We'll want the interviewer to sit around the same height as the interviewee. That way our eye line is neutral, meaning our subject is not looking up or down. During the interview, our subject should look at the interviewer, not the camera. It should be just like a conversation between two people. Now we need to decide how to run audio. For the easiest setup, I recommend using a wireless lavalier. You can simply clip the mic to your subject and plug the receiver into your camera. Just make sure that the microphone isn't rubbing against any clothing or skin. For the best sound quality and the least visibility, you can use a shotgun mic. This is what we'll be using for our current setup. To use the shotgun mic, we'll need a few other things: a boom pole, XLR cable, C-stand, and finally, a boom hook. If your boom pole will be extended over a large distance, I also recommend a sandbag. Let's go ahead and place the C-stand next to the camera. We'll insert our boom hook and tighten it down. Now place your assembled boom pole and shotgun mic into the hook. Now extend your boom pole so that the shotgun mic is over the subject. Once the boom pole is extended to the proper distance, carefully and slowly raise the C-stand until the tip of the microphone is just out of frame. Remember to use a sandbag if the C-stand seems unstable. Assuming our setup is good to go, we'll run our XLR cable from the boom pole to the camera. I recommend wrapping the cable around the C-stand as you go down. This cleans up our setup, making it safer, but also puts less pressure on the connection itself. With audio setup, we can move on to lighting. At CMAC, we have a variety of 3-point light kits available for checkout. All kits are battery powered and include cables for wall power. Lighting is a crucial and often overlooked part of an interview setup. How you light your subject can drastically change the mood of the video. For instance, if an interview is on a neutral topic, it should utilize more light on the subject. We want the audience to see the subject in the best light as possible. A topic that can be seen as heavy or dramatic may warrant a moodier setup, like this. To learn how to achieve even more looks, check out our curated lighting playlist. And finally, what if our subject wishes to remain anonymous? Sure, we can simply blur their face in post, but why create more work for yourself? If we direct more light behind the subject, we can completely black out their face and simply have a slight silhouette. This not only looks better, but can also give your subject confidence that their anonymity will be preserved, rather than trusting that you take the necessary steps to keep it in post. And there we go. That's our basic interview setup. Just remember to adjust your camera settings and check your audio before you begin filming. Cool, but what if I want to film the interviewer as well? In this scenario, most of the current setup can actually remain the same. But there are a few additions and small changes that you'll want to make. First thing, of course, is another camera and tripod. you'll want to place your new camera on the same plane as your first camera. This means that our interviewer and interviewee will be looking to the opposite sides of the frame, making it feel like they're talking to each other. Breaking this, called the 180-degree rule, can be extremely jarring for the viewer. Like this. Gross. Next, we'll need to figure out how we hear our interviewer. With our current setup, we could just attach a wireless lav to our interviewer. This would work, though there may be subtle differences in how our two subjects sound. The easiest and most practical solution would be to use a wireless lav on both subjects. This cleans up our setup and ensures that our audio sounds the same across the board. Finally, of course, is lighting. You'll want to make sure that the interviewer and interviewee are lit the same. Keep in mind that this may require the use of more lights. This will create a visual continuity between the two angles. The last setup that we'll be going over involves multiple people being interviewed at the same time. The trickiest part of this setup is the audio. The shotgun mic, for instance, could work, though it may have a hard time picking up on anybody that it's not directed at. To avoid this, you would need an experienced boom operator to direct the mic at whoever is speaking. You could use wireless lavs, though that could be cumbersome with multiple people. If you did do this, you would need an external audio recorder, like the Zoom F4, to take in all of your audio. And of course, we have tutorials on that, if you're interested. The one solution that may be the simplest for large groups is a handheld microphone. This is available in both wired and wireless form. The advantage of the handheld mic is that there are fewer audio sources. The guest can simply pass the microphone to whoever is speaking. The huge disadvantage, however, is that you can't control how close each interviewee will hold the mic to their mouth. A good rule to remember is the finger rule. When making the hang loose sign, your mouth should be at your thumb and the microphone should be at your pinky. Although difficult to remember in the moment, that's the ideal distance that the microphone should be held. Too far, you can't hear them and you lose quality. Too close, and they could peak. This setup would require a separate individual to monitor audio at all times. Ultimately, the best solution is up to you. If possible, I would recommend avoiding group interviews as much as possible. Try and interview each person individually and stitch their responses together in post. This gives the most control and will sound better too. And with that, you should have an amazing looking and sounding interview. Remember, there's always room to improve, and you should play around with your setup to see what works best for you. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to charge your batteries.
If you like this tutorial, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel, and be sure to check out our playlist of other tutorials. You can stay up to date on all things CMAC by following us on social media. Learn how you can become a CMAC member with access to equipment, editing tools, and other resources by going to cmac.tv.